For my final project, I will be talking about two novels that we discussed in class. Originally, I was thinking about doing the puppet show, but then I talked to my boss, and then she said that I would have to wait until we were closed, which, even though there's nobody there past like 6, because people don't send their children places at 8 o'clock at night, I would have to wait. So, and also I looked at all the puppets. They only have animals and food type puppets, and I knew I would have to get into more symbolism, and I feel like I would have to discuss how I chose those puppets. So I decided to make a video talking about love and mislove. So I know when I made the my final project proposal, we had not read Their Eyes Were Watching God yet, but I had read it in high school, so I had a really good idea about what I wanted to say. So I'm going to talk about that in the Bostonians. I want to take, as I said, I want to take a look into love and mislove. For Their Eyes Are Watching God, I want to talk about the mislove between Nanny and Janie. And for love, I would like to talk about Janie and Tea Cake. In the Bostonians, I want to talk about the mislove with Basil Ransom, or Basil, as you say, who I think is honestly just a sexist asshole, and Olive Chancellor with Verena. First, I'd like to talk about Olive Chancellor from the Bostonians, which was written by Henry James. She is a woman of taste and intelligence, and although she's old for that time period, she is unmarried because she's kind of caught up with a lot of the feminist movements. I won't necessarily say caught up, but she's very involved with women's suffrage, and it's pretty much consumed her life because she wants that political change. But she met Verena Tarrant, and she was very taken with her, and she kind of took her under her wing, and I think this showed love because she kind of turned her into her protege, you could say, and she just saw her as a very beautiful soul, and that really spoke to me because I feel like that's what you do when you truly love someone, whereas Basil Ransom had a very different. I'm sorry, my roommate is singing All Star downstairs. Basil Ransom is he has a very different attitude towards her, more towards the mislove side. Next, I would like to talk about Basil Ransom, just my personal opinion, and I'm sure you could somewhat agree. I just think he's an asshole. I'm just gonna put it out there. He is. So Verena Tarrant is a very beautiful young woman, as described in a book. She's very passive and decisive, and she's a public speaker for women's rights, but I know Basil Ransom is just looking for a beautiful woman to become his wife and birth his children, and just be the typical wife that has dinner ready when he gets home from work, and he just doesn't support what Verena wants to do. And one of the mislove things that I caught while reading the book was at one point he was kind of saying how I perceived it was that he thought that she was being controlled by her father, when that was obviously not the case. She was making these decisions for herself. She was saying what her ideas were, and I just thought that was very cruel, and he just is not a great person, and I feel like his mislove actions outweigh his love towards Verena despite being infatuated with her. Next up, I would like to discuss Their Eyes Were Watching God. First, I'm going to talk about the mislove between Nanny and Janie. So Nanny was Janie's grandmother, and it's really the only parent she's known, and so props to Nanny for that. She raises the girl, props to that, but not 100% perfect. She has really high hopes for Janie's future, and it's kind of skewed by Nanny's past traumatic experiences. She lived through slavery, and she ended up being a bed wench, I believe it was called, where she ended up getting raped and had to have a baby that was uh, by the white master. Absolutely horrific. Um, but what the master did was even worse than that. It was Nanny's reputation. He tarnished it, and she was only seen as an unmarried mom and not as the victim of being raped. And to make it even worse, the daughter that she had was also raped and gave birth, and then became an alcoholic in order to dull the pain that she had been through. So that's what built up all those high hopes, was she had been through so much and watched her daughter go through so much. She didn't want her granddaughter, Janie, to go through that. She wanted her to marry and be a legitimate wife and have a legitimate child or children. And I believe that that wasn't wrong, but at the time that was still very high hopes. But she also kind of lies to her and kind of turns a blind eye, because her only goal, the only thing she wanted for Janie wasn't necessarily to be happy, was to just find a husband that was suitable. And obviously her first husband was not that, but it's just she just wanted someone in the middle class, relatively financially stable, and she wouldn't be able to reach that in her lifetime, so she kind of imposes it on Janie to marry a self-respected and very by the town too landowning farmer. And even though she wanted the best for Janie, she lied to her a lot, and she didn't care if she was happy. She just wanted her to get married and have legitimate children, and I think there were other ways to have Janie find happiness. Next up is loving Tea Cake. We all love Tea Cake. He is Janie's true love after all she had been through and all the unhappiness she had to go through in order to find her way to Tea Cake, but he wins her heart with his fun-loving nature, and she adores the energy and willingness to make her his equal rather than just being his wife. So we see that Tea Cake is very different from Janie's first husband, especially when he teaches her how to play checkers. I thought that was a very cute scene. I'm just reading off of my notes here that I have typed up. Tea Cake, set it up and began to show her, and she found herself glowing inside. Somebody wanted her to play. Somebody thought it was natural for her to play. That was even nice. She looked him over and got little thrills from one of his good points. Those full, lazy eyes with the lashes curling sharply like drawn scimitars. The lean over padded shoulders and narrow waist. I thought that was very nice, but as silly as a board game, it spoke volumes to her, because the fact that he considered her smart enough to even play a game, whereas Joe had a less modern conception of what women were or what they could live up to. So I think the loving quality can be shown in the gender equality he shows to Janie, where he has her even work alongside him in the fields. He doesn't just keep her locked up in the house. And both of Janie's earlier husbands wanted her to work too, and she resented it, but the difference was it was hard labor, and it wasn't working side by side. It was doing what they thought she was able to do. And obviously, Tea Cake's attitude is very different. He gives her a choice whether or not to work. He doesn't command her to do it. That was another really loving thing he did. And also, he wanted her to work so that they can share that time together and share that experience of working together as well. And he also, when she's working, he doesn't see her as an object like Logan or Joe did earlier on the book, but rather as a partner and companion. And lastly, another thing that distinguishes Tea Cake from Janie's previous husband was his willingness to talk and listen. That's another very loving trait that he has, because especially in this time, it wasn't common to have a very loving husband, and those were fundamental flaws, as I said, between Logan and Joe. Logan never expressed himself, and Joe obviously never listened to Janie. We learned that very quickly. And he does both. He's awesome. We love him. I loved Tea Cake. He treated her very well, showed a lot of loving qualities towards her. And overall, I just thought he was a wonderful character, and I could tell that he cared a lot about Janie and truly loved her. So, just as a little conclusion, I was able to talk about Love and Mislove, about the two books there as we're watching God, and the Bostonians. I showed how even though Nanny had the best intentions for Janie, there was still a lot of lying and deceit and just wanting just enough for her to meet the expectations of society rather than having her granddaughter be happy. And Mislove for the Bostonians was Basil. Overall, he was just a sexist asshole. That's it. That's my only opinion of him. I know he wanted a pretty wife to birth his children, and that's it. So that's all I can really say about him without getting too angry. For Love, though, I thought Olive Chancellor was a very good, loving person. She wanted the best. Verena took her under her wing, whether or not it was in a relationship type way. She still did everything she could to have Verena succeed in her career, in her speeches, in her activism. And also Tea Cake's very loving nature towards Janie, especially after all she had been through, was another really satisfying thing for me to read, especially after reading all these terrible things that she had to go through. But all of that said, thank you for a wonderful semester. I hope I get to take another class with you later on. I hope you have a wonderful break.
Jaws, that's what you are like it to better get fucked.